I've got it. A bunch of people went and played Assassin's Creed Shadows, and one person who I think we've talked about this before, but one person I watch most of their reviews for is SkillUp. He's an Aussie, and I want to hear what he has to say about playing Assassin's Creed. The title of his video is "I wasn't having much fun with Assassin's Creed Shadows hands-on impression." So a bunch of people, I believe, went to Montreal. There's probably other places they went and played this game early. So my watch is vibrating and telling me I haven't moved enough, but we're going to watch this video nonetheless.
Going to be doing even more work this year with this video sponsor, Lost and Cold.
This is a cool
You may remember them from that incredible Outer Wilds commemorative.
When does this come out? I believe it's March. It was set to be Valentine's Day, and it got pushed back to March because of other games that were coming out at that time.
They put together featuring over 250 pages of essays, interviews, and perspectives on one of the greatest games ever made. Lost in Cold do these sorts of books and collections regularly, and they've got some incredible stuff lined up for 2025, including a Legacy of Kain project, which I may or may not be a little bit involved in. To learn more, click the link below.
I bet you he's writing for them.
Video.
March 20th?
Okay, so Assassin's Creed Shadows. So for a bit of context...
Can we just take a minute and look at what this man's wearing? That's a thong.
I want to say a few things about my relationship to AC
Just
games and to Ubisoft games more broadly. First of all, contrary to popular belief, I actually like Ubisoft games, generally speaking. We all like to dunk on their fairly formulaic approach to game making, but sometimes you're just in the mood for that sort of open world, map marker driven, tick the things off the list kind of time, and I'm not immune to the allure of that sort of experience, particularly when it comes to Far Cry. I love that shit. Last year was a rough year for Ubisoft, but I personally really liked...
Dude, it's been a rough little while for Ubisoft.
Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown and the Rogue Prince of Persia. I didn't hate Skull and Bones as much as a lot of other people did, and I actually enjoyed Star Wars Outlaws despite its many, many obvious shortcomings. Hell, I even had a kind word for X-Defiant, so I guess I like that game more than Ubisoft's management did, since they shut that shit down just a few months after it launched. So those are my Ubisoft...
Does anybody here play Skull and Bones? Because I would love to hear... What are we doing with Skull and Bones? Like, how is that live? And like, I somewhat enjoy X-Defiant. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to buy anything in that game, and I probably only play it like once every 2 months, but it's refreshing. Skull and Bones, I'm never going to touch. So like, is anyone playing that?
Ubisoft takes. What about my Assassin's Creed takes? Well, that's a little more complicated. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is one of my favorite games ever, but the more modern AC games have been really hit and miss for me. I haven't heard of a single person that's played that game. Maybe it's all AI bots like we were talking about. Origins. I liked Odyssey, despite the fact that there was a solid 25 hours of that just felt like grinding bullshit designed to sell XP boosters. I quite enjoyed the first 20 or so hours of AC Valhalla until I eventually came to loathe it because the game just would not fucking end. And AC Mirage, I found myself quite disappointed by it. It set up a really nice, focused foundation centered on stealth, but it never evolved after that. It just made the forts bigger, plus the writing was abysmal, the worst written AC game yet, I think. But here's the thing, the modern AC trilogy games have been phenomenally successful for Ubisoft. Generally speaking, people love them. They are critical and commercial hits. Ubisoft have a winning formula, so they are naturally...
Does anybody know how many copies of Valhalla sold? Oh! Okay. 20 million,
to be more inclined towards trying to please fans who already love the modern AC games, rather than trying to reinvent the formula too drastically to win...
Dude, Shadows sells 20 million. Ubisoft might be okay.
Over people like myself who are less enamored of the series. I provide all this context so you know where I'm coming from when I talk about an AC game, and all of that is a big preamble to the substance of my impressions, which is me talking about why I did not enjoy the 5 hours I spent playing Assassin's Creed Shadows. And that is actually quite a unique experience for me, given that even the AC games I didn't like, I still kind of enjoyed them in their opening chapters, because the world was
You didn't like it.
New, and you were meeting new characters, and you were getting to grips with the newer evolved game systems. My issues with modern AC games would always begin to emerge after that honeymoon period wore off.
That's a good point.
But for me personally, there wasn't really any honeymoon period here, as it kind of just felt like I was meeting a number of core design and narrative issues very quickly. I'm going to cover a fair amount of ground in this video, so I want to make clear my central thesis, and that is that the decision to split out the core modern AC fantasy into 2 separate characters, each with their own unique play styles.
Okay, so if you don't know, I'll make this really simple. There are two characters who you play as in this game. One's a sneaky girl and one's a big buff dude. Sneaky girl can sneak around. Big buff dude can hit people hard.
That sounds like a really good idea on paper, and maybe it is, but so far, for me, the execution is not working. Modern AC gameplay has always been a balance of stealth, parkour, and full frontal combat, with much more focus on that full frontal combat part of the equation. Personally, I think that each of these core systems are pretty weak on their own. Like, no one's out here saying that AC combat is S tier, and no one's saying that the stealth sandbox is as sophisticated as Metal Gear or Hitman, but because you can move between these gameplay styles so freely, it all sort of hung together. The thing that makes AC Shadows unique compared to the other modern AC Trilogy games is that instead of one main character having access to the full combat, stealth, and parkour sandbox, they've essentially split these fantasies across two separate characters. Yasuke embodies the samurai.
I'm assuming they have two different storylines that are merged. I'm assuming. He didn't really say that, did he? Like, he doesn't say, like, you play two separate characters and then there's missions where they come together, or are you playing one story where they're constantly together? I don't fully understand that.
He's all about full frontal assault and literally barging through doors. Naoe embodies the shinobi fantasy, which is actually largely analogous to the overall Assassin's Creed fantasy. She's focused on stealth, misdirection, leaping across rooftops to scout a location, finding hidden entrances to buildings, etc. But she can also throw down, and she's just as lethal up close as she is from a distance with a shuriken. For this reason, AC Shadows is a game comprised of 3 parts: combat, stealth,
so it sounds like you have one character who can do everything and one character who can just fight.
Parkour. And only Naoe has access to all 3 of those parts.
Yeah.
As a result, when you're playing as her, it feels like the game works because all of the game's systems are being leveraged and the assassin's fantasy is center stage. It works. But when you're playing as Yasuke, you really only have access to 1/3 of the game's systems: combat.
Just fighting.
And I don't think it works. Yasuke's stealth capabilities are much more limited and his parkour capabilities are way more limited. Like, this guy is clearly meant to stay on the ground, for sure. As a result, all Yasuke really has to rely on is his combat, and unfortunately it's not good combat. Again, I don't think modern AC combat has ever been particularly good, but you also had other tools to rely on so you weren't fighting all of the time. But as Yasuke, you're fighting all of the time.
And the combat's not great.
It's the same combat from previous AC games, which is very sloppy and animation paired, resulting in limbs teleporting everywhere, and the whole thing feels very arcadey. The bigger problem with it is that Yasuke is incredibly fast. The speed of his strikes, how short his animation recovery times are, how quickly he can dodge, and how much distance he covers during those dodges.
He's easy to fight with.
The speed of his various special moves and how he sort of streaks like a bolt of lightning across the battlefield. He's meant to be this massive, lumbering force of nature, but none of that power is communicated through his combat because he seems just a spry...
I completely agree. Black Flag, incredible game. Best Assassin's Creed game. I'll fight to the death on that one.
Agile as Naoe is. Plus, Yasuke is like borderline invincible. I don't think I died once while playing with him for 3.5 hours. He deals so much damage. He is so fast and so resilient that it's legitimately difficult to die. Just to give you an example of how much of a unit this man is, he can obviously burst through doors when you sprint. It's how Yasuke progresses through levels when Naoe has to find another way around. But Yasuke isn't just limited to charging through wooden doors, he can also charge through concrete balustrades.
He's a big boy.
While looking at this happening, I was like, Ubisoft, I think you may have overtuned this guy just a little bit. That over-reliance on subpar, poorly tuned combat is definitely a problem, but there's also the fact that Yasuke isn't built to make good use of the game's other core systems, stealth and parkour. In the case of stealth, he can sneak, but he's so big there are
the man don't climb good and the man don't sneak good.
Smaller spaces he can't sneak through. More importantly, he can assassinate people, but only a brutal assassination, which is very loud. Obviously, that sort of assassination is going to attract a lot of attention, so Yasuke's assassinations are typically used at the start of an engagement to dispatch one
you
foe
just fight a bunch of
bigger
people.
fight breaks out,
Yeah.
rather than a tool allowing you to clear an entire section of enemies without being detected.
I'm going to be honest, most of the time when I play Assassin's Creed games, that's kind of how I play them, because I'm really bad at sneaking in games. But like, if you can't get through small areas, and you can't sneak at all, and you can't climb things, How are you going to play as that?
Parkour is the really big dividing line between Yasuke and Nawe.
I try to play as
Yasuke
stealth.
can do
I'm
some
just
very
not
limited
good at it.
parkour, but he's much slower while doing it, and you can see him really struggling to mantle up ledges or whatever. And yes, that feels very authentic and believable, but I never really wanted an Assassin's Creed character who can't parkour well, and now that I've got one, I definitely don't like it. There are also harsher limitations on Yasuke's parkour that are frankly kind of annoying. So when you're not in the middle of a main mission, you can actually freely switch between Nawe and Yasuke by opening the menu and freely switch the harsher limitations on Yasuke's parkour that are frankly kind of annoying. So
okay, so he's level 25. He's got a level 25. It looks like 2 weapons, a sword, and I'm not sure. Is it a gun to the right? What the hell is that thing to the right? You got a horse, which doesn't have a level. And then you have a helmet and chest piece, and it looks like there's room for one more thing. So there is loot. There's just not a lot of loot. And then if you look behind me, it says Legendary Long Katana. It looks like you can level it up, which is kind of neat. Weapon DPS, it shows you that. Posture DPS and ability damage. Adrenaline gain. Counterattacks make enemies vulnerable. Upgrade hideouts forged to engrave a perk. Okay. So there's something to do with a hideout. No idea what that is yet.
So when you're not in the middle of a main mission, you can actually freely switch between Nawe and Yasuke by opening the menu and holding down a button. At that point, you enter a loading screen, freely switch Yasuke's parkour that are frankly kind of annoying. So when you're not in the middle of a main mission, you can actually freely switch between Nawe
in the main gameplay, you can switch between the 2 characters, but if you're in the middle of a mission, you cannot.
Yasuke by opening the menu and holding down a button. At that point, you enter a loading screen, the world repopulates around you, and you're standing in roughly the same spot as you were before, but as the other character. When I sat down for my playthrough, I really wanted to play as Yasuke as much as possible because, to be honest, I'm actually really interested in his storyline. So I chose Yasuke at the start of my playthrough, and in typical AC fashion, I opened up my map so I could see the nearest synchronization tower. That unlocked loads of map markers for me, helped me get my bearings, etc. I see the tower, I mark it, I head over to it, and I begin climbing it, and no sooner do I do that than Yasuke says this.
Nawe could reach the top of that pagoda if she wanted to challenge.
This was the game's way of telling me that Yasuke actually can't climb this tower, only Nawe can. She has a grappling hook that lets her rappel straight up, whereas Yasuke can't do that. And so in order to sink this tower, I had to open up the menu, sit through the loading screen, load in as Nawe, climb the tower, and then switch back to Yasuke. Again, I never asked for an Assassin's Creed main character who couldn't climb a tower, and I don't think forcing me to change characters to get the job done was particularly smart design. So that's an example of how a lot of AC Shadows works, in that the level design is built to accommodate 2 separate characters with 2 distinct playstyles. And that example is one where it's kind of silly, but there are other examples where it's actually kind of interesting. The previous slice we played culminated in a final mission that involved ascending a tower to assassinate someone, and these missions are very structured in that they have cutscenes, and at the end of each of these cutscenes, you choose who you want to continue.
Okay, I'm gonna say something here, and I feel like in recent Assassin's Creed games, the way that Assassin's Creed used to work is it seemed like there was like these 15 people who were like this underground cult of assassins, and it was mysterious. You had to join them. Only certain people could do it. And now it just seems like, okay, the Assassin's Creed, the assassins were massive and like kind of anyone could join, and it wasn't actually as secretive as we once believed. And I don't like that as much. I liked, like when I was playing the first Assassin's Creed game, I was actually like, I think I was like 13. I was babysitting my cousins. My uncle had it. He got me chocolate milk and Doritos for when my cousins went to bed. He's like, dude, I just got Assassin's Creed. You got to like sit and play that thing. And like, I'll be back at like 3 a.m. with my friends. Play it. Let me know what you think of it when I get back. And like I played it. I'm like, this is incredible. Story was awesome. It's something new that had never been done before. There was mystery, intrigue behind it. And I feel like that mystery and intrigue behind Assassin's Creed is kind of gone. The Animus isn't as big of a thing. I don't know if it is or not in this game, but like the pulling you out of the Animus and that backstory behind it was always good. And I don't know. I just don't see that happening anymore.
And that decision will greatly impact how the rest of the mission plays out. If you're playing as Yasuke, you can literally just break down a door and start ascending the tower level by level, dispatching every goon as you do. If you're playing as Nawe, you can't break through that same door, so you need to find another way in. That forces you to climb the tower from the outside. This meant I skipped a huge amount of fighting on the way up, and I was able to assassinate a few people when I finally got in.
Okay.
I also noticed that the level design itself was very different based on who I was playing as. I got to this section here as Yasuke and it was all blocked off, but as Nawe, these boxes were removed, revealing a hidden passage that let me get in under the floorboard so I could get past a locked door. So it is really interesting that there are two ways to experience the same mission, leaning into two totally separate fantasies. One of them kicking down the door and 1v1ing everyone in sight, and the other was about exploration, stealth, and assassination, with a little bit of combat thrown in as well. But here's the kicker. It's boring to kick down the door and 1v1 everyone in this game.
Or
I played this
3v1.
final mission at the end of my 5-hour-long session. I played it first as Yasuke and then as Nawe, and it was the mission that really crystallized how I felt about this game, because I was honestly really bored playing as Yasuke throughout most of my hands-on session, and when I was playing as Nawe, I was like, you know what? I'm having some fun here. It wasn't incredible Game of the Year level fun, but it was enough for me to be like, yeah, this is working. But I just don't think it works as Yasuke. It just doesn't. And when I do eventually play this for review,
so it almost would have been better if they just combined the characters.
I'll probably be playing as little Yasuke as possible, because you can choose to main one character or another throughout most or potentially all of your playthrough. And you might say, well, what are you complaining about then? Just play the character you prefer, right? Well, yeah, but I would have liked to have played as an assassin samurai. That would have been pretty cool. And Yasuke's limited stealth and parkour combined with his overpowered combat capabilities make him very unfun to play, I think. I wish I had better things to say about the game's writing, but unfortunately I...
Yeah, so the question is that a big deal, right? Like if you actually think about that for a second, is that a big deal? Because if you have the option to play just as one of the characters, okay, then play as the character that you enjoy playing more. The option to play as the other one is still there. You're just upset that you can't do a couple of the things that you wanted to, right? I don't know.
Again, I spent 5 hours with both Yasuke and Nawe, and they felt so lifeless and dull, almost robotic. They're united by some form of grief and fueled by a commitment to honor. If you're going to have two separate protagonists, then I feel like that would have been an opportunity to have two very different personality types to kind of play off each other. While there may be some differences that emerge over the course of a broader playthrough, I saw none of those differences here, and both of them felt rather interchangeable with one another in their dialogue, their worldview, and the sort of reception they got from people talking to them. Narratively, this section of the game was a little tough to follow. It was about unmasking a mysterious figure, but similar to AC Mirage, that just involved clicking on pieces of paper that were laying around in different places, and then somehow you piece together who the bad guy is, and then it's off to go kill them. While doing all this, I never met a single interesting character who seemed to have any personality. Everyone I met felt as stilted and as lifeless as the main characters I was controlling. Obviously, we can't judge a game's writing and now...
Dude, Double Dutch, he said, ever play Red Dead Redemption 2? I don't know why. That is the most asked question I get. Maybe I just need to do like a story video on Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't know what it would be on yet or how I would do it, but maybe I do. Maybe I'll talk to CJ, one of my editors, about doing that. That might be fun. I have twice. I beat it twice. Anyway.
Narrative based on just 5 hours with it, but I will say that nothing in that 5 hours left a great impression. I unfortunately have similar things to say about the world design and exploration. Ubisoft are on record as saying that this will be a less map marker driven game than in the past, but that wasn't my experience playing it for 5 hours. It was still about sinking those towers, selecting those map markers, and then heading toward them. The one spin on this was kind of a bummer actually. At one point the game introduces me to something called the Scout system, which on paper sounds really cool. The way it's explained is that Yasuke and Nawe are cultivating a network of spies.
Okay, so this is because I don't know if I missed him saying this, but I played Cyberpunk and then it was too broken and I didn't. I've never replayed it and I never played. I have it. I own it. I just haven't played it with the DLC or since they fixed it. Maybe we should do that one day. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so they tried to fix just following map markers all the time in this game. And I think that's what this is about.
And that by feeding them the necessary supply resources, you can dispatch these spies/scouts to distant lands to scout ahead for you. And okay, that sounds pretty cool, right? Like I'm imagining these scouts are NPCs that I meet and recruit. They have personalities, maybe a bit of banter.
Can you pet the dog?
Maybe they run up to me while I'm out exploring the world to, report their findings, etc. All of those were very incorrect assumptions. What the Scout system actually is a map pinging system. At various points, you'll get clues about where to go next, just as they've done in previous AC games, actually.
Okay.
So they'll say the target is in the southeast part of this district, in a temple. and all you do is move a cursor on the map over the spot where you think it might be. You push the scout button, and if you guess correctly, then the map marker will appear. And that's it. That's the scouting system. It's an entirely menu-driven affair that actually discourages you from exploring and makes you even more reliant on map markers than if this system didn't exist at all.
Why does that even exist?
I also really struggled with the responsiveness of the world. Pretty quickly, I realized that Yasuke was borderline invincible, so I was like, okay, let's just start killing people and see what happens. And so here I am, just indiscriminately murdering people in the streets, and no one is doing anything about it. There's no royal guard dispatched to bring me to heal, no wanted system. I just kill people without any consequence.
Wanted system?
There's also no moral consequences. Here, I just brutally murder an innocent, unarmed serving woman, and there's nothing telling me, like, hey man, you probably shouldn't do that. It feels incredibly out of keeping with the nature of Yasuke's character.
Not only that, it doesn't even feel like Assassin's Creed. If you accidentally murdered someone in a previous Assassin's Creed game, you'd go like 5-star, everyone's hunting you, you gotta kill either 60 people or... that's weird.
And the broader sense of social justice that is the creed of the assassins. So look, I obviously was pretty scathing in this preview, so I want to say a few things to wrap it up and round it out. Firstly, do recall that I'm not the biggest fan of modern AC games. Some of them I thought were okay to good, some of them I straight up didn't like. As such, I'm probably not the target audience for AC Shadows, because this is a game that is clearly targeting the people that enjoy modern AC games, and rightly so. So, as always, I do encourage you to seek out other previews from people who do love modern AC games more than I do. Their perspective is going to be really valuable.
So I'm not gonna lie, like I like the modern, somewhat modern formula for AC games, like the Origin. What was the one? Was Origins the one that was in Egypt? Because whatever one was in Egypt, I really liked. And then Valhalla, I had the same experience where I started playing it. I'm like, this is great. And then I'm like 35 hours in, I'm like, this is a lot. And then I'm like 50 hours in, I'm like, this is too much. That was kind of my experience.
More valuable than mine, I'd say. Secondly, I spent most of my playthrough playing as Yasuke, and I really believe that you are going to have a vastly different and vastly better experience playing this game as Nawe. Because like I said earlier, she's able to make full use of the AC sandbox, combat, stealth, and parkour, whereas Yasuke is basically just combat. I think that the amount of time I spent with Yasuke really skewed my overall impressions, but at the same time, Yasuke is one of the main characters. He's, you know, got a storyline that I personally am really interested to see, and he's the only way to play the samurai combat style that I'm really into. I don't believe that there should be a bad or lesser choice when it comes to a main character, but Yasuke kind of feels like that at this point, and I think that giving him so few stealth or parkour options was a mistake, because you could have had two equally capable assassins who just so happen to have very different core fighting styles. Ubisoft have gone for something more novel and more ambitious and more interesting here, absolutely, and full credit to them for doing that, but so far, I don't think it's working. And finally, to conclude, I really want to stress the so far part of that sentence. This was just 5 hours hands-on and only a specific section of the game. It is, of course, entirely possible that the final product is way better because the writing starts to pop off, or maybe the mission design makes great use of Yasuke's more limited kit, or maybe the open world is full of surprises. I don't know, so please don't look at this or any preview as a definitive judgment on the game.
That's a good point.
That comes with the full review. These are my own personal impressions, having played just 5 hours of what I expect will be a 50 to 60 to 70.
I was gonna say 50-hour game.
70+ hour game. So I really do leave lots of room for the possibility that I end up enjoying this. But yeah, so far, not feeling great about this one. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check back in March for the full review. Thanks.
So, I'm gonna play Assassin's Creed, right? But I don't know how to cover it. Like, I don't know. We're gonna play it on stream, and then I'll have a video on the second channel that'll be like, so I played Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it'll be like the first 3 hours of the game, and then that'll go up. But like, then my options after that is, do I do a full Let's Play of it? Do I just play through it off stream and then kind of do a review of it? Do I, like, I don't know how I actually want to do that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how I want to, like, there's certain games that I play that are like Astrobot, for example. It was like a 12-hour game. Okay, I played through it, and then I 100%ed it, and I recorded the whole thing, and then I uploaded it. But like, uploading a 50-hour game, bit much. bit much.